Welcome to this week's episode of Review Ed. Kirsten Winkler and I are going to be talking about a lot of things today. We're going to be hitting primarily things having to do with the web, the open web, and our uses of the web here in education. Is the open web, is the common web, is it dead? Well, Robert Scoble might think so. We have Rafael Corrales with us he's the CEO of LearnBoost. He'll be weighing in on that topic with us, as well as a number of other topics. We'll be covering some great news out of a company called Goldbook, and I wrote a review on them. We'll be talking about that product as well. We are covering copyright of student notes. Do they have rights? And how much intellectual property are they infringing upon by sharing and selling those notes? Talking about Google's first technical employee actually leaving Google and heading for Khan Academy. What's his role going to be there, and how will that help shape things? We'll be talking as well about why teachers aren't using their LMS and SISs. These things are expensive, they're cumbersome, they're hard to implement. Why aren't they being used fully, and why aren't people loving them, and why aren't they doing what they need to do? So all that ahead on Review Ed.
This is Review Ed episode 15, recorded February 10th, 2012. Who owns your data? This episode of Review Ed is brought to you by Einstein, the social learning network. Einstein is the social learning network for higher education and lifelong learners. Einstein enables anyone to create an online learning community for resource sharing, collaboration, and discussion. Visit Einstein.com and follow them on Twitter at EinsteinKnows. And by LanguageLab.com, bringing the world of English to you. Discover the future of online English language training and learn English in a virtual city full of real English speakers with specially designed courses for general English, business English, oil and gas, and aviation English. Visit corporate.languagelab.com and follow them on Twitter at LanguageLab. So welcome everybody. It's Friday again, so time for Review Ed. We've made it up to episode 15, and as every week, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Christopher Dawson of ZDNet, contributing editor there, and of course also the Vice President of Business Development over at VisIQ. So, Chris, welcome.
Good to be here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And we are also happy to have another guest on the show. And I thought, as we are going to talk quite a bit about learning management systems, student information systems, note-taking, sharing, selling in general on this episode, who better to talk to than Rafael Corrales of LearnBoost. He is the founder and CEO. And very happy to have you on the show, Rafael, and welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's get started by a little bit lengthy article of Mr. Robert Scoble. I don't know if you made it from beginning to end. I think it was at times a little repetitive, but I think we got this point that he feels we are living in our silos and our data is stuck there, may it be Facebook, Google Plus, or other social networks, other applications we use, and probably the worst thing, we are happy with it. And what do you guys think about this? Not only feeling he has, but saying it's just the way it is, and I should be blogging more, I should use RSS more, but that's just the way how our internet now works. So is the common internet dead or still alive? Maybe Rafael, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I look at all these posts, and of course there was an interesting post from Scoble. Look at all these posts and try to put it in the context of education, which is, of course, my day job. And that's a problem we've been seeing, not just in the general web, the common web, but in education, of course. And so the argument we've seen is that all this data is siloed in all these different accounts, and you can't get it out. And what that means is that all these products, as they get more and more of your data, they lock you in that much more, and no longer are products competing on product quality and therefore innovation and therefore making things better for everyone in education, but they're just getting you locked in. And so the issue is, or one of the issues, is that it wouldn't matter how much data you're putting in if you could get it all out, if you were able to export it, if you were able to download all your data. So it's interesting that he signals out Google Plus when you can get all your data in a dump from most Google services. So that's something that education needs to take a lesson from and realize that, hey, if you're a teacher, if you're an administrator, if you're using any type of product, can I get my data out of this? It doesn't matter if the company's raised $15 million in venture capital. It doesn't matter if it's, a huge corporation. Corporations blow up in a day. I mean, next thing you know, someone's out of business. So the question that teachers and administrators and anyone else in education should be asking themselves is, can I get my data out of this service? Because if you're not paying with dollars, then you're paying with data.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's what makes a lot of these companies profitable, or that's the way they can advertise or get advertisers on the service. It's basically our data and what they do with it, and most of the time we don't have what you said, the data portability, and also not all of the insights on our own data. What those companies have and what they then sell. So, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, well, this goes right back to Google's privacy flap from a couple weeks ago, and when in reality, what Google was doing was at least making some sort of attempt to be a little more transparent about how they monetize all of these data we're happy to give them. It was a few years back when our school districts went through one heck of a migration from one student information system to another. And it was probably one of the most painful IT projects I've ever been involved with. And I've been through company mergers. I've been through a lot of data horror. Excuse my ringtone there. That's terrible. So data are painful, and we all know these sorts of mergers of information will be tough. But what we found is that we ended up having to recreate a lot of data, and the SIS that we had before was purchased by Pearson. They had no intention of moving it forward. They had every intention of acquiring customers and moving folks into PowerSchool. And PowerSchool is a better product anyway, so I guess that was okay. But we couldn't get our data and move it to another SIS that we had chosen, and what we had for years after that, we had data integrity issues. Mm-hmm. So whether it's personal data or data that you're using in a cloud-based service, or even a client server, proprietary system that's sitting on premise, this idea that you need to have this forward look about how an exit strategy and an entrance strategy, I think it's pretty critically important. The other piece that I find interesting in all of this is, yeah, we're kind of locked into services because we have all of our stuff there, but we also have all of our colleagues, our peers, our friends, our connections there. So Google has had very difficult time starting a social network because everyone's already using Facebook. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot in education about just kind of giving up and co-opting Facebook. And although I don't think it's necessarily a bad strategy, there's sort of this default look to Facebook as the new forum for working with and interacting with students and facilitating these interactions. And because people are already there, as alternatives sort of pop up and emerge, they go by the wayside because where else are you going to go besides Facebook? Mm-hmm. And yet we do see that Facebook really kind of locks us down in ways that are almost even creepier than what Google knows about us. So a lot of considerations.
Yeah, it's a little bit, on the one hand, I have to say, the value of Google Plus and Scoble saying, well, over the past 7 months, they brought him like 400,000 followers, and, I think he once mentioned or shared one of my articles, and like instantaneously I had, in a week or something, as many followers as I have on Twitter. On the other hand, with Google Plus, do I have more shares, more plus one, more impact from Google Plus? No. So it's a little bit, but well.
Yeah, this managing of all these social networks, there needs to be a nice tool where I can just broadcast across networks. Because I got to tell you, I got a plus one here, and I got a tweet there, and I've got a like there, and
can eat up your day, really. So it's What I'm going to do now is probably install an app I just heard about like 2 days ago called ThinkUp app, which basically allows me to get all my tweets out of Twitter and get the insights Twitter has about me, but doesn't necessarily share with me, and see how my tweets perform much more in detail than what Twitter offers me. And we will see. So in generally, I'm definitely pro that when I want to get my data out of a system whatsoever, that I am able to, and that it's not locked into a system. But and I mean the same for education. So as you both pointed out, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about, from our students' perspectives, they share a lot of stuff, and I think most of us, the people who are listening to this webcast, fairly savvy about what we post on Facebook, fairly thoughtful about it, and we're not going to do anything too stupid. So if Facebook keeps all of it, fine. They can have it. I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said elsewhere and tweeted 14 times in Google Plus One. Fine. But when you're a student who's now looking for a job and you have no recourse and no way of really understanding fully the impact or the footprint of what you've done and said on Facebook, and you're hitting that first job application, and up come your profile or your information that's floating about via Facebook. I rail against the general apathy towards having some thoughtfulness about our digital footprints, and yet our students, my own kids, they just don't have a clue. And no matter how much I say it, they don't get it. So.
And also the story we had, Facebook, how long they archive our deleted pictures apparently. So that's all pretty revealing, but as you said, we cannot not be there and the weirdo who is not on Facebook. I think as long as it was a geeky stuff and a geeky thing, and you were in this community and you explained, they might have said, yeah, okay, even we get it, even though if we don't share your opinion. Now it's just too late, as everybody is in one or the other, or mostly in all of the different social networks, and of course we create data. We need to work with it. So in an educational sense, of course, and I mean for you, Raphael, definitely it is important to get the teacher data and the student data, and to work with it, and also to make it beneficial, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you've covered us before and the things we've done on this front. So, making that data available, being able to export. In our case, stepping back for anyone who doesn't know our product, it's administrative software for teachers and for schools, and it's free. And what you had mentioned was that being able to get that gradebook data out, which we offer, being able to download anything that you've uploaded, so whether it be something from a presentation down to some sort of grade or whatever the case may be, you can do that as well. The usefulness of that is tremendous, to be able to get this stuff out and say, okay, 6 months ago I had a lesson plan, and I don't know where that attachment is that supports this lesson plan, but I want to use it again. Well, there it is, if you're able to access it and get it out and use it individually. So in some ways, we see the use of the product become a place to store this information as well, which becomes tremendously useful down the road when you can't find this particular thing to support whatever you're teaching on that particular day. So that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of uses for this data being able to access it and get it out, that's tremendously important.
And I think it's very much to your honor that you do it, because you are, I have to say, at least to my feeling, one of the few companies or one of the few individuals defending and promoting the common web. So do you, seeing all these new things happening, do you feel a little bit endangered by it when so many companies prefer the opposite of basically locking it down? Or do you think and you want to pursue that you're on the right path, and it's right that somebody, if they want to, can take their data, export it, and do with it what they want, because it's essentially theirs?
That's a great question. I mean, the way we see it is that it's actually great for business to be open and to have this stuff available, because all we're doing at that point is saying, basically putting pressure on all these competitors who like to lock up this data, putting pressure on them and saying, hey, you can't lock in a teacher, you can't lock in an administrator, because what they've done is change the field from being able to compete on product quality to competing on data lock-in. And so as long as we're promoting open, and a lot of new startups as well are promoting openness and being able to get this data basically more portable, that's actually great for the general industry, but it's also great for us, because you asked, how do we see it? How do we view this? It's great because what I want most, more than anything, is to be competing on product quality, because we fare pretty well on that front. So I want it to be all about product quality. As long as that's happening, then we're feeling great about it. And so we want openness. We want more data portability. I'm going to keep promoting that, forever.
Yeah, I think it's one thing if you... Oh, go ahead, Kirsten.
No. Please.
So I think it's one thing if you're consenting to having your data somewhere, but if you're a teacher and your school has adopted a system, then then you didn't consent. You were told, and here's this is it. So I think that there's companies like this that provide software as a service to the enterprise, but particularly to educators who, and this probably leads into our next discussion, but have a degree of intellectual property around what they're creating in the schools. There needs to be some sensitivity to that, and administrators need to be sensitive to that. And I guarantee 98% of administrators out there are not thinking about this. This is not on anybody's radar until all of a sudden they need to deal with it, and that's a hard thing. And it's whatever happened to diaspora, by the way? Weren't they supposed to solve all this?
Yeah, I am not 100% sure if they stopped after the death of one of the lead developers, co-founders, or if they still continue to do that. So I haven't heard about diaspora in a while, to be honest.
Long time. Right.
In a long time. So.
Well, I have one more question on this, though, Raphael. You offer this ability, but how often do people make use of it?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that since it's there, we have a lot of very satisfied folks using the product. People aren't using it all that much, but it's so reassuring. It's like having an insurance policy. It's so much more reassuring to know that your house is insured in the case of any sort of disaster.
Right.
You're not going to go use this policy unless a disaster happens. And so very few people are actually using this. We have basically two separate functions within LearnBoost, but either of them, very few people are actually using this, but that's actually a great sign. And then when we talk to folks who sign up, because we're very metrics-driven and very data-driven, and we love to find these things out, one of the top reasons is that people realize, they say, I can get my data out in case anything happens. And so, that's a finding we like to share with folks, because even competitors who sort of, look to us in this leadership position, if they do this as well and they make their data more portable, then everyone benefits in education. So it's one of those things that is a big reason for signing up, but is not a very often used feature, not so far.
That means your clients are happy, so that's a good thing.
Kirsten, you brought up the last couple of weeks the idea that there's this chicken and egg issue of people being unwilling to jump in with a startup or use a new and unproven service. But if that service from the get-go says, look, your data will be portable. We're going to be very open and transparent about this, and we're going to give you an exit strategy if anything happens. Obviously, folks are going to be a lot more likely to try out something that's maybe a bit more unproven than knowing they have to move with an established solution. That Pearson's not going anywhere, whether we want it to or not. So I think this gets right back to almost an insurance policy for the startups, or a way around this adoption issue.
Absolutely, that's positive advertising and arguing from a strong position, and I'm not afraid at any point if you feel that there may be a better solution out there and you really want to take your data out and want to take it with you, then do it. But we believe that we provide you with a very compelling product, and you won't be likely, in our opinion, or motivated to leave. So yeah, it's the best way to do it. Rather than the locking it down, and maybe I could interpret that they feel much less assured about their product then, in a certain way, maybe. Okay. Well, as Raphael has a busy schedule, I just want to probably quickly jump into the report from Gartner you shared with us, Chris, financed by the Gates Foundation. So it's good that they finance some research, and basically why all the different groups. So in this report we have the teachers, we have the principals or the leadership within a school, and then the districts, and basically evaluating student information systems and learning management systems, and what sort of problems there are, why teachers aren't happy with it, what the problems are that they don't use it as you suggested, Chris, and maybe do you want to give Raphael a little intro into that, because I'm sure he didn't have the time to read the whole report, maybe.
Yeah, there are even parts of it that I skimmed. It was a tome, but the point here is that lots and lots of schools have implemented lots and lots of systems, and they generally have they almost have to have an SIS, a student information system, to comply with federal reporting standards, state reporting standards, generate grade reports, etc. Most folks have moved beyond Word or Excel or something else terrific. But then there's also this layer of learning management system that gets introduced at many schools, and it may be introduced at a departmental level or at a school level or at a district level, and it's sort of done a bit more haphazardly because it isn't required. It's gravy. Even though I think most of us who have used a learning management system in the classroom realize that it makes life ever so much easier for everybody involved if it's done well. But what this study found is that some people are able to get the data out that they need. So if you're looking at a district level, at a macro level, you can generally get the data you need to sort of move the district forward. You're getting enrollment reports, you're getting some understanding of students in, students out. But then you also have teachers who they can get their grades. Great. You have principals who have no granularity in terms of what they can see and really help their teachers be data driven. So you have this real split among users, and so where do you go from there? Your thoughts, Raphael?
Well, it's interesting. The report, the higher level conclusion was that SIS and LMSs aren't being used as much as you would think. They're expensive, they're cumbersome. Basically, no one likes them, and that's not too much of a surprise. I mean, we're all smiling. Everyone in education would just generally agree that the stuff that's out there, at least from the legacy providers, is a disaster. And so that's what the report concluded. If that's the high-level takeaway, then we kind of knew all that. And so why did this happen? That's what I'd be interested to see in the report. I need to spend time this weekend digging in and see if that's in there. But, as for my take on it, why this stuff happens, think about who these products were designed for. They were always sold top-down, so they were always designed for administrators. And it's the teachers who are using this product who should be using this product, but they're not. If there was a product that was designed bottom-up for them, so for the teacher, and then it was built for an administrator, then you would see much more teacher engagement. And so it's not just us that are doing that. I mean, that's how we started. We built for teachers first, then we built around that, and the last piece we did was administrators. We're very patient about that. But we're also seeing other education start to do that as well and realize that, hey, let's build for the classroom first, and then let's build for the school, and then let's build for the district. So I would imagine that hopefully there's some ink devoted to that within the report. If there's not, that's one of the big reasons that we saw before we even got started with LearnBoost. That's one of the reasons we saw that folks were not happy with their SIS or with their gradebook or any administrative tool that they were using.
And that certainly is in there, as well as this issue of training. And quite frankly, there wouldn't need to be as much training if it wasn't built top down, if it wasn't an administrative tool that happened to get shoehorned into a classroom. So, I think as well, teachers, even our less savvy teachers, most of them at least have a Facebook so they can see kids, pictures of their grandkids. They can navigate around a Web 2.0 interface. So, when you look at a lot of these systems, though, they continue to be, and I think I say this every week, they continue to be kind of stuck in, 1997. And, when digital immigrants have hit these systems, and they're hitting them within the last 5 years, they're seeing things that are just, they're like Windows 3.1. It's awful. And so there's this interface issue. Blackboard just is, announced, last week, actually this week, quite an extensive revamp of their UI. They didn't change any of their core functioning. They didn't change any of the underlying pieces. They just made it look nicer. And I have mixed feelings on how successful that will be as a strategy, but at least when you look at it, it's not quite so, what's this?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I personally doubt that this is enough. So having a nice interface, the new upcoming companies have that anyway. It's implemented in their DNA already. And one of maybe an interesting point for me from the, for example, LearnBoost, but any other startup perspective was this data on for how many years have they generally used the individual system. And for learning management systems, it was almost 4 years, so 3.9, and for student information systems, even more than 5 years, I think. So which makes it, I would receive it as quite hard for a new startup, and I mean, Raphael, we have talked a little bit about that in our interview on EduQuest already, but of course it hires the barrier for a startup like LearnBoost, I assume, to at least enter bigger and important districts. And particularly if it's made on a district level, the decision, and not from as you build bottom up, so on an individual educator or at least let's say school level. So, but maybe share a few experiences with us, and then we let you go.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great point. And I think there's a lot of sort of things that need to be addressed all at once. So one is, as a new startup, we're backed by the same investors that back Twitter, Skype, and LinkedIn, and a couple other big companies. If you look at that, those investors typically want a pretty big exit, which means things need to move pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So capital needs to be more patient in education than it is in other industries. You can still have a world-changing outcome, but you need to be more patient with the timing. The report only confirms that. That's part of it. So you need to have the right investors. But the other part of it is that the approach. So if you look at that data saying that it takes 4 or 5 years, or that's how long that schools typically tend to use their administrative system, just to sort of group it all into one category, just to make it easier. If you look at that, that's a backwards-looking statistic, right? That's because all this data has been locked up. That's because there haven't been new entrants into the market to offer better solutions. Basically, when we were talking to people a year and a half ago when we were getting started, folks were saying they wanted something different. They were willing to try something different, and they were willing to switch as long as it met their basic needs. That's it. It wasn't even that they needed a lot of fancy stuff. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of different folks sign up, start using our product, and then it spreads from there. And then finally, the last bit that's really important in terms of addressing this issue and seeing where you can grow and where you can't grow, you have to realize, if you're any startup, and for us there are these challenges as well, you have to realize where you fit in and where you don't fit in. So we do not fit in. We could not support an entire state tomorrow. We could in a couple months, we could down the line, but we could not support an entire state. However, we can support entire schools, and we can support, at this point, entire districts. So one thing we saw in the evolution of our product was we built first for teachers. Schools got ahead of us, and schools started using our product even though it was built only for teachers. You can imagine that causes some high-class problems, some headaches, if you will. And we said, wait, we're going to build for schools. We built for schools, and then districts and CMOs started using us, and organizations. And we had the same high-class problems. And that's roughly where we are 18 months later. We're at that point where we're building out that higher-level administrative solution so that entire organizations can use us, CMOs and districts. So all that, bringing that all together, you can compete with the Pearsons, the Blackboards, and these legacy providers. You can compete with those folks as long as you realize where you are in that life cycle, and as long as you're just honest with yourself and say, hey, we're going to pick up the individual schools for now, but we're coming for those districts eventually.
And all of that in just 18 months. So one could also say that you are faced with a very maybe challenging but also a good problem to solve, in fact. So I would worry much more if it was going in the opposite direction.
Every interview I feel like I'm talking about my team, but I'm very lucky with the team that we have and that we've built. Every single one of them is just really, really great. And so, you point out it's 18 months. That's because of the team, the way we've built, the things we've built. We're in 12 languages. That's my team. So it's thanks to them that's why we've done what we've done so far. And hopefully we keep it up. That's the big thing.
And then it's also good that you found your patient investors. I think that's what Chris and you and I talked about this, but this is what many people in education or related to education had to learn over the past couple of years, we can say.
Yeah, learn the hard way. Definitely.
Okay. So, Raphael, we let you go. Thank you so much for coming up today, and let folks know where they can learn more about LearnBoost. It's obviously the website, learnboost.com. Your blog, maybe. What would you like to sort of plug a little bit?
Yeah, learnboost.com. If you're a Google Apps school, we have the deepest Google Apps integration. So go to Google Apps, type in LearnBoost. We're one of the top installed apps on the entire marketplace. Add us there. We're in 12 languages, so for any of our international audience, almost every major language is covered. You can press literally 2 clicks to be in a different language. That's thanks to our international community because it's crowdsourced translation. And right now, the current offering is still free. So we're a premium business model. You can get your data out. We have the data export. But in terms of the model, the teacher account is very well built out. People can use that right away. We have administrator accounts, and all of that's free. So learnboost.com to sign up.
And to make the way back to the social networks, of course, they are on Twitter, on Facebook, always very easy, and consistent branding at LearnBoost.
Yep, and we've got a great customer service team as well, so it's all there on the website, but support at learnboost.com as well. We'll get back to you right away.
Thank you, Raphael.
Perfect.
Enjoy your day.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Cheers.
Let's take a break and thank our Run of Network sponsor for this week. It's Einstein, and Einstein, Chris and I talked a little bit about them last week already. So the social learning network, basically you can set up a learner profile. In the context of lifelong learning, you have various different topics on Einstein. You can learn, you can exchange with, you can also have your students if you want, and set up a learning experience for them. So if you're into lifelong learning and a little bit learning, they have some topics for higher education, but a lot of just generally interesting topics and subjects, so you should definitely check them out if you are in this kind of stuff. And well, we of course thank them for their support of ReviewEd and EduQuest in general. You can find them at einstein.com with a Z, and on Twitter they are Einstein Knows, so if you want to get in touch with them on the social networks.
Right.
And a few days ago we had the opportunity to speak with two ladies, Jennifer Carolyn and Wei-Yi Chu, who together lead the New Schools Venture Seed Fund. So a little bit a branch out of the New Schools Venture Fund, which is pretty known, I think, in at least in education already. And we, of course, wanted to learn more about what they do. So here's the recording for that part. So for this segment of the show, Christopher and I have the pleasure to be joined by Jennifer Carolyn and Wei-Yi Chu of the New Schools Venture Seed Fund. And yeah, we are very happy that you have time for us this morning. And of course, we want to learn more about what you do, what the new seed fund section of New School Ventures is, and I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about that. So welcome to ReviewEd.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us on.
I mean, from your announcement, we have we had the chance to learn some facts already. So you invest between 25,000 up to 250,000 in early stage companies in a variety or a wide range actually, from tools, applications, but so technology also in general. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more in detail how you shaped your focus and how you actually want to make these investments or invest in particular people. So just tell us a little bit about this at the beginning to somewhat set the tone.
Sure. So New Schools Venture Fund has been around for over 12 years now, and we were founded by venture capitalist John Doerr and Kim Smith, who now is running Bellwether Education Partners. And we have always invested in education startups. It's always been something that we've done, and Kim Smith used to call our earliest stage investments around the corner. And so now we're sort of just formalizing that approach that we've taken. And there's been so much energy and excitement and such a great emerging group of education technology entrepreneurs that we wanted to set up this seed fund to be able to accommodate them and to make investments in some of the ones that are aligned with our mission and that we're really excited about.
Mm-hmm. So you, Jennifer, and Wei-Yi both co-lead the fund, and then you have a group of experienced advisors, of course. What I would be interested in, and I'll let you ask your questions in just a second, Chris, but how do you actually choose the startups, or is it really that, is it as important to invest in the team of founders? And so both these things, I think. How do you pick your startups, and who do you choose as entrepreneurs?
Do you want me to take the team?
Sure, you can take the team.
So, yeah, it's a great question. I think the earlier stage that you go in the investing, the more important the team is. Mm-hmm. And so, we are really looking for passionate, driven entrepreneurs. I heard this term yesterday that Mark Jacobson used. He said we're looking for alpha geeks. And I agree with that. We're looking for entrepreneurs that are authentically driven to solve a problem, so they're trying to scratch their own itch. So we have entrepreneurs like Alex Grad of Better Lesson, who started this company as a result of trying to solve a problem that he had while he was teaching in Atlanta. We have our first investment is Goldbook, and the founding entrepreneur is Daniel Yu, and he was a special education teacher, and he had a kind of front seat to all of the areas that could be improved in special education, and so he has set out to start a company that is looking at how we can improve our special education system.
And to add with Daniel, he is actually kind of a gem in terms of having a very technical background.
Mm-hmm.
So he started as an engineer at Google and Oracle, and to have a founder that holds both a very technical background as well as been a student special educator was huge for us. And it was a great to have such talent building in the field in such a in a market with such a very clear pain point in special ed.
This is probably a rare gem. I mean, great for you that you found it, but usually I see most often, well, there are some seed funds, or also I feel angels, angel investors, maybe even venture capital firms investing heavily in the technology side, so the engineering side, and also clearly make the focus that it seems to be the most important thing for them, that the founder or the founding team brings that to the table, and sort of the educational aspect comes secondary. However, as you mentioned, Jennifer, Better Lesson already, it seems to be that you put an equal importance to having founders with a clearly educational background, which is maybe sets you a little bit apart from other people investing in education, as education being somewhat the big topic maybe last year already, and certainly in 2012 even more so.
You want to take that?
Yeah, I don't want to. That's absolutely correct. And we in terms of the mission at New Schools is about transforming public education through education entrepreneurship. So having educators on the founding team is essential. But I don't want to undermine, particularly for the seed fund, our focus around technical expertise, because we truly believe in investing in for-profit education technology companies that can be capital efficient and sustainable. So I definitely agree. We look deeply at the educator experience on the team, but we also want to believe we can bring in the best technical talent at some of the best ed tech companies we look at.
Yeah, it's more art than science, right? Like there's not a real formula here, and it's complex, but you're really looking for these. You kind of know when you see them, these entrepreneurs that are really driven to solve a problem in education, that are authentic, and sometimes they've been educators, sometimes they experience this as a student. Like Ngrade, for example, was founded by this guy Bry Holt, who was a 15-year-old student who just wrote up this code, this online grade book, because he was trying to solve a problem for his teacher. Another example.
And probably is also the dynamics within the, usually it's a team of founders, so having the engineering technical person, and then also somebody for the pedagogy or with the educational expertise. So Chris, I let you take it if you want. I'm sure you have some questions for.
I do, because I'm actually fascinated by the mission. I think it's so rare that we talk about for-profit and public education, and yet if we don't, then we don't make any forward progress. I think people have trouble getting their heads around the idea that you absolutely must have sustainability and profitability to drive forward innovation. So Yay. Kudos on that one for taking that step. Have you encountered resistance from the educational establishment around that, or is there a pretty decent understanding that you need to combine these, kind of juxtapose these two worlds of for-profit technology and high-stakes technology with the advancement of education?
Yeah, yes, we have. So I think it's been tricky at times, and our background. I'm a former teacher, and so I'm not coming from the for-profit the for-profit world, and I've been at New Schools though for both of us have been for 6 years, and we have seen the value in the for-profit model in these technology companies and their ability to scale and attract technical talent. So when companies like Better Lesson and Goldbook are looking for developers, they are competing with other technology companies here in the Valley and in Boston.
Right.
And the developers are looking for, some equity and other sorts of compensation packages. So for these companies to be really competitive, they need to take on for-profit models in most cases. There are exceptions like Khan Academy is in our portfolio, and they've done a great job starting to scale here in the schools with a nonprofit model. But I come at this from a teacher, and I thought teachers deserve the very best technical products to do their jobs. They're being asked to do more and more in our schools. And, why don't they deserve the kind of Google and Apple-like products that the consumer tech world gets? So, and that's sort of the angle that we're coming at it, was we want our teachers to have the very best tools to do their jobs.
Absolutely.
So how do you go ahead.
So it's worth noting quickly, we do draw a line. New Schools does invest in several charter management organizations, so schools, and that's probably the line we've drawn in terms of not having made investments in for-profit schools. So the C Fund is just focused on tools. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
No, that makes perfect sense. So, well, I guess then the question is, how do you help companies? How do you help startups balance the pricing? If you're looking at serving underserved markets, then obviously budgets. The first place it gets cut is gym, music, and technology, and gym. We need physical fitness, so we can keep that. But so how do you help companies find the right pricing models to be able to obviously make a profit and scale appropriately, but also serve underserved populations?
Yeah, I think we've got some really innovative models in our portfolio, and beyond that, there's some interesting approaches here, and I'll just name a few. So Grokkit. Grokkit's a social learning platform, and they have an interesting model where they have kind of a one-for-one program. They call Grokkit for Good, and they're direct to consumer, but they also provide software and tools for low-income, underserved students for free. So that's one that's in our portfolio that we like a lot. And then there's the freemium approaches, where this is sort of mirroring what's going on in the consumer technology world, where companies like Better Lesson and NGrade and Goldbook provide their basic level of services of the product for free for teachers. And so teachers in low-income communities, teachers everywhere, are cash-strapped and there's budget cuts everywhere, are able to adopt these technologies to help them do their jobs better. And then the idea is it's a premium model where there's a premium level of services that the district can pay for.
So most of them are taking a bottoms-up, direct-to-teacher student approach as parallel processing with a top-down approach through schools and districts. So, it's $1 million question. It's something you could argue the jury is out in terms of being able to build a company for the consumer and an enterprise model, which we think is exciting and has to be done to scale in public education. So we don't focus on just consumer-facing companies. The company has to be tackling to some degree an enterprise model into schools, to scale and to reach all students.
Mm-hmm. And just the other thing I'm really excited about is these. So in disadvantaged schools and communities, we think that we are going to help support these companies that are going to provide better products that are more innovative for the schools that need it most at a lower price point. So, there's kind of the first generation of education technology enterprise products. It was a different time, very expensive technology, right? And some of these new companies are using the latest technologies, and they can create better quality products at a lower price point.
Right, faster. Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense, and obviously it's an idea whose time has come. It's simply a matter of being able to get this in students' hands and in teachers' hands. I mean, as a former teacher as well, trying to work in the 21st century with less than 21st century tools is not so easy. Now, this is a question I tend to pose to a lot of people, and I'll let you guys talk a little more, but so often in schools, we see the same old thing being done over and over, but we layer on this sort of thin veneer of technology and call it 21st century learning, or we're making these big advancements, and now we're serving kids better, blah, 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 when in fact we're doing the same thing. So how do you see some of the products in your portfolio, and then feel free to call out particular products, that don't just add that veneer, but really transform, that do something very different and let teachers jump to the next level?
I might talk about Goalbook.
Yeah.
Here. We love Goalbook. So it's a good question, and it actually keeps me up at night because we do get the question of, are we investing in companies that are reinventing the wheel better, right? And that's about it. And I look at a Goalbook who is targeting a very niche market in special ed around goal tracking, around IEP goals, which are independent education plans, which is federally mandated for educators to track. But I think, and the technology is excellent, the design is beautiful, but I actually think they're a bit ahead of the market for the general ed in terms of thinking what ILPs will be in 5 or 10 years in education, which is the bigger vision. Maybe blended learning comes after special ed for them because blended learning is already implementing individual learning plans, but their vision is much bigger, and I look at that big impact. At the same time, we do want to make sure entrepreneurs are laser focused on a clear problem today. So I just use that example because we kind of see the short-term and longer-term path, and how it plays out is still up in the air, but we get excited by that vision.
Yeah, and I'll give just a tangible example here of the Goalbook. I think that is a really good example. And I think that the social networks are starting to really take off in K-12 education because education is it's about communication between teacher, student, teacher, parent, all the different permutations. And so social networks are really ideal for education because they're helping bring all of these groups closer together and reduce the friction of the communication. So just to play off of Way's comments about the Goalbook. So Goalbook is actually instituted in my kids' school, and they use it to track goals for every student, so that the parents and the teachers can be on board with the same goal. So my son, sharing some personal information here, but my son's goal is to take more risks. So we can kind of reinforce that at home. And then there's this kind of Facebook-like news feed, and you can make comments to your to the teacher that what he did at home sort of reinforce the goal. And that's just a small example of the ways that these products are, I think, helping us communicate better around common goals for our kids' education.
That's brilliant. Now I know what I have to look at for my CDNet review tonight, because having every single one of my kids has managed to be on an IEP at one point or another, and two still are. And but honestly, I think so much gets lost with the kids who aren't. And I always like the idea that every kid really needs an IEP, because everyone obviously has individual learning needs, and which is that was the way you pointed out. This is kind of where this whole thing is headed. But what a neat way to not have to single out these kids in special education, but instead let's set goals for everybody, and not making it this this special routine you go through every 6 months or every year with your special ed kids, and pop into these meetings and check off a few boxes.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Take a quick note, because they are focused on their mobile product right now, and mobile is obviously a very important delivery tool. It's almost a given. Any web app company that's building mobile basically has to be in your strategy. And I just think the power and implications of special educators being able to capture, whether it's a photo or video or and that type of progress is almost unprecedented. Like you said, the once-a-year dump of very general information into a compliance-driven system.
And so it's shortening the feedback cycles in every different way here, and I think helping us all get better faster.
Yeah, definitely.
Faster. And the other piece that to your question around productivity is a big deal, and so a lot of the tools that we're seeing are helping teachers be more productive and efficient with their time. And as a teacher, I know I spent a lot of time doing things that didn't really enhance
directly add value, right?
Yeah, and so we used to call this at school the milk money problem, where teachers were still collecting the milk money when they should be creating brilliant lessons to deliver to their students and working with their students and doing the sort of highest value activities. And so we're supportive of companies that are going to help teachers minimize that non-value added time and focus on what really counts.
Excellent.
And from the seed fund perspective, Wei Yi said that the companies, on the one hand, have to have clear short-term goals, and they want and have to meet, and on the other hand, you, of course, wisely give them the time to pursue and to achieve their long-term goals. But from the structure, do you say from the beginning, let's take like one segment, and we invest in one company, the company we think is the most promising one in this segment or sector, or do you are you also open to invest in two companies parallel, and you just see in the long run who has the better business model, or who attracts the schools also and customers, and are sort of open in begging two horses?
It's a great question. It was up for a lot of internal debate, even with our board, on that strategy. And I think where we landed was closer to the former. Just where we thought we could bring value, we wanted to be fairly hands-on, and we did not want to see that conflict of interest. We just didn't think it was a safe bet for us to take two similar companies and support them. So far we've been fairly hands-on with these early-stage investments. So, we leaned toward kind of focusing on what we felt were the most mission-aligned with New Schools and the best company we thought we could help. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of pushback from some of our board members who said we should just be seeding the entire market to see what kind of bubbles up. Mm-hmm. And we kind of push back on that argument.
Yeah, and I also think that it's I think when I started doing this work, I thought that things would converge a lot sooner than they would actually.
I think we all did.
We all did, yeah. Can confirm.
Lesson plan. Or social network is an example. Now there's how many social networks, and they're serving different needs. So I think that we're careful about it, but we're also cognizant that we just we have guesses and we have best guesses of our this kind of thesis driven around different sectors. But this is a early stage, so we have to watch and see how the market evolves and see where this goes.
Mm-hmm. However, you said, unlike I also sometimes or actually frequently hear, you can figure out your business model later. So, I mean, you also have to pay attention and take the money side into consideration for your fund. And so, do you pay attention that they have a somewhat logic or you think viable business model? What I think I got from your previous answer, and or do you? I mean, how do you think you will eventually get your money back from the startups?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We we first and foremost look for very passionate users of the products that we are looking at. We want to see that this product is filling a need, and that there are passionate users, and there's some. Most of the time we look for success on a micro scale. It can be a very small set of users, but some group of teachers, educators is saying, we can't live without this product. So that's, I think, the first thing that we're looking for. But yeah, I mean, the business model matters. Like I think it's early, but having some sense of how they can monetize this eventually and who is going to pay for it is matters, and we work with our entrepreneurs on different approaches there.
And definitely how they have thought about the sales cycle. Have they done their research on even understanding what that means in education? So yeah, it absolutely does matter.
Chris, anything else of interest?
No, I mean, honestly, I'm just so excited to think about Goldbook at the moment.
I'll let you check that for ZDNet in just a moment.
No, but I really this is interesting because I think there's obviously a lot of buzz around education right now, and it's big in the VC community overall, and we see lots of movement there. But to actually see some very thoughtful, careful movement in with some real strategy towards change, and not just cashing in on kind of the latest bubble, which I hope is not a bubble, but it feels bubbly. I applaud your efforts certainly, but I really think that this is really critical, and to be able to take innovation into this space and fund it and actually make some money off of it. Hey, all the more power to you. So really, congratulations. And thank you very much for your time.
So, and those aspiring entrepreneurs who really want to do something in education, do you accept to talk with people throughout the whole year, or do you have periods? Or generally, where can people find more information about the New Schools Venture Fund and, particularly the Seed Fund, and where can they find you online?
Innovation happens year-round, and we are happy to see innovation happening year-round and take a look at the companies and meet these wonderful entrepreneurs. I mean, what we are most excited about is to be able. There's so many amazing entrepreneurs out there, and to be able to find some that we can support and work alongside them is just a real honor for us and New Schools and more broadly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something very quickly. We can't fund everything, but we've surrounded ourselves with a very strong group of funders that are very aligned with our philosophy, whether they're angels, super angels, traditional VCs. We're growing this community because we know we need more capital at this seed stage. So I just want to kind of plug the network that we've created, because New Schools can't fund everything, all the great ideas we're seeing. But all our information is on our website at newschools.org, including our emails, which has been good and a little.
Wow, that's rare. So that's actually not so common in the angel, super angel, or even venture scene.
This might change if
if you get a flood of
But the more the better right now. We're incredibly excited. Right, it's a great time to be in the space.
Yep.
With good reason, and there's a huge unmet need. So definitely keep those emails on there.
I hope so too. Yeah, no, those flat hierarchies are very nice, but I can understand that people sometimes that get requests from over time to way too many people, so that they want to make themselves a little bit rare. So that's also understandable. So Wei Yi and Carolyn, Jennifer, I'm sorry. Wei Yi and Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time and talk with Christopher and myself today. And I feel that we really learned some more about your motivation and also the ideas behind the New School Venture Seed Fund. And I'm very happy that we had the chance for this talk today.
Please keep us posted.
Thank you so much for your time, and we love your site. It's beautifully done.
Thank you for the work you both are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Well, in our talk with them, they dropped, of course, a few names of startups they support and they funded, and one of them was particularly interesting for you, Chris. The startup is called Goalbook, and on ZDNet you dedicated your new article to Goalbook, and I read it, of course, but I think you're much more in the situation of really seeing the value. So as I understood, simply from having, from having your children, and every child naturally has different needs. And tell me what is so great about Goalbook.
So I called this up in my article as well, but the idea is that every student does have. We have these individual educational plans, and every student who has a diagnosed disability either has at least in the States, has a 504 plan or an IEP, and I think there's functional equivalents pretty much worldwide. And these specify accommodations they can have in class, things that instructors need to do that are special to help them work inside generally a mainstream environment. Obviously, the students who have much more significant disabilities also have IEPs and are outside of the mainstream. But for most students, there's the goal is to function in the least restrictive environment, as it's called. And so these IEPs are written to specify how that's going to happen. And they identify goals, and they're very long documents, and they're dry, and they're of limited value. Because usually a teacher at the beginning of the year takes a quick look, says, okay, yeah, I'll make sure they have a calculator some extra time, and test an acquired environment. Okay, great, done. And that's as far as the IEP goes. And throughout the IEP, there's lots and lots of goals. And those goals, again, they just kind of get copied over from year to year. And some districts do a great job of this. Some schools do a wonderful job, and some teachers do a wonderful job. In general, though, it's a very large bureaucratic process that just sort of gets glossed over, and we do the best we can for students with special needs. So having been through, I can't tell you how many IEP meetings, both as a parent and as a teacher and as an administrator. It is a process that is absolutely fraught with bureaucracy and just nonsense. Mm-hmm. So what Goalbook does is it comes along and it all of a sudden introduces all of these social networking sensibilities that we all sort of have ingrained in us now, and shares these goals, and it distills out the IEP to a set of manageable objectives and goals, and then it allows teachers and staff and specialists and parents to share progress on those goals, which seems obvious. You know, in the world of Facebook and Web 2.0, why nobody has taken this forward before, I have no idea. Why we're still using binders of IEPs at most schools, most districts, I don't know. But Goalbook dispenses with all of that. And what they have is now an awesome interface. It's reminiscent of Edmodo, but it's really focused on sets of attainable goals for students. And so you look up, Bob Jones, little Bobby Jones, and you see that he, has right on his little page that you access as a teacher. You see your class. You look at Bobby Jones, and he needs to sit in the front of the room. He needs to, have handwritten notes provided to him. And, right now his major thing that he's working on is diction and, CVC words. Great. Okay. Again, seems really obvious. So what a teacher can do then is say, hey, guess what? Bobby Jones actually took his own notes today. He did a great job, and they're, really, really good. And the teacher can actually put up a little what they call a celebration right inside the social network and can specify with a checkbox that gets emailed to the parents, that goes up in the student's record, and hey, I just scanned those notes, and I'm going to put them into the student's portfolio, attach them to the student's goals. It's really, really intuitive. It's really sharp, and it's the sort of thing that parents would actually look at. Students, as they get older, can have a part in this, and that is even better, that's very much generalizable to the mainstream student population. So, we start looking at the idea of differentiated instruction then for students who are, outside of the special education realm, being able to provide for their own individual learning styles and needs. Well, everyone should have goals in education, not just get an A in the class or get a B in the class, pass the class. It should really be to learn something, and we should be able to identify those learning goals and do something about them. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought in your article when you said that. And now again, it's so obvious. Why didn't we have that before? That some, if you want to call them normal teachers, sort of hijack the product and use it for their classes, which is understandable. I mean, if this was missing or has been missing so far, and lowers the barriers and everybody involved, so the parents as well has access, and you don't need to set up a special meeting and so on. So everybody benefits. Can you already identify a business model? Because, when you're venture-backed, even if it's by a seed fund, they will probably sooner or later want to have that money talk.
Yeah.
And
this is easy, because if you look at the existing you look at the existing products on the market right now that address special education, they're very much centered around simply tracking IEPs. Their whole thing is just maintaining these documents and maintaining compliance with the IEP process. So you have dotted your I's and crossed your T's legally and met your requirements, and being able to report on those requirements. They don't address in any sort of reasonable way that teacher-student-parent interaction that's so vital to really successful outcomes, whether you're a student in the mainstream or you're a student on a special education plan. So I was blown away. As soon as I heard about it, I was excited. I thought, hey, that's a good idea. When I actually dug into it and started using it, they set up a sandbox for me. It's really brilliant, and it's in beta. So this is the sort of thing that the districts can and should pay for. This is the sort of thing that it's easy to justify to taxpayers. This is also the sort of thing, we hear schools are required by law to spend money, pretty much whatever money they need on special education. But they spend virtually nothing on gifted education. They spend virtually nothing on addressing the needs of struggling students, or students who maybe have issues at home. But just because your parents aren't doing well together doesn't mean you get an IEP. So all of a sudden we have a much better means of closing the loop between parent, student, and teacher, as well as administrator, and a way of doing it that's easy. You know, they have a universal set of goal banks now they've just introduced that are aligned with the Common Core standards. So you can just start picking out goals for your students. They have, of course, custom goals. You can set up your own goal banks, things you know that you're going to work through with every geometry student year after year. And so you can set those up, and then again, you make it social, and the parents get looped in. So, yeah, districts will pay for this. I have not a doubt in my mind.
So when I heard Jennifer and Wei Yi talking about Goalbook, and it definitely has the twist into the special education sector, but I thought, interesting. It's again a company in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, getting so much attention, whereas to me it sounds very similar what Time to Know have been doing since 2004 already. So without maybe having this positive advertising and networking and so on that you apparently get when you are based on the West Coast or particularly in San Francisco. And I mean,
Yep.
Time to Know go further. So as they have developed the specific curriculums and so on, but Goalbook is, if you will, a part of the whole package Time to Know deliver with curriculum and also technology. Right. So Goalbook sounds like they only took this part out and sort of added a new layer to it. And sometimes I feel, how do you feel about that, Chris? Is it good to have a relatively small idea, but really execute on this idea and be the biggest fish in the pond? Or I sometimes feel, not only in education, about this whole app development and so on, that most founders nowadays concentrate on the small ideas you can execute quickly, and 3 or maybe 5 years later you do something completely different, instead of going for the big idea of really changing something in the system.
You know, I that's a great question, and I actually asked the founder, what do you see in terms of integration with other products going forward, in terms of open APIs? I haven't heard back yet, and I promised them I'd take it off the record since they're kind of at an early stage. But I do see that the products like this, if they serve a niche, absolutely must look to be part of an ecosystem that a district or a state can leverage. That being said, the special education process right now is so badly broken and so complex and really so critical, particularly if it could be generalized to overall improving student achievement and student success, both inside and outside the special ed realms. I think their choice to focus on this was absolutely critical. There's also a real movement in education towards towards outcomes, of course, but also towards the development of a portfolio, being able to look beyond an A or a B or a B minus, and being able to really demonstrate mastery. So if you have evidence that you've reached these goals, that's really far more valuable than a report card or a transcript that says, yes, he's checked off these boxes and met these requirements. So I think that this is a harbinger of things to come. I hope it is, and I think they made absolutely the right choice in this case to focus. I really do. They're going to need to integrate though, so I'll be looking for those open APIs.
And our next story is about something students have to do every day, which is note-taking. And there was an interesting article on Mindshift. I don't think that the article simultaneously explored both possibilities of pure note sharing on the one hand, and then taking notes, but with the objectives to sell those notes in the same way. However, it was an interesting article, so no doubt about that. And basically it a very important question arises, and I have had this question for a longer time actually. Do students have copyright to their own notes? But more specifically, when I learned that Czech acquired Notehall, and Notehall previously had a certain history of cease and desist requirements to basically take some stuff down, and so I asked myself, why does Czech want to acquire them? Do they really play at risk here? That I mean, yes, sometimes schools, colleges, or higher education is slow, but sooner or later the question comes up. And I mean, we have this little bit funny or weird status at the moment that it's often said, well, your professor, your teacher decides on an individual basis if they allow no sharing basically of their materials, and then all the strings attached with that naturally educators or professors don't want that maybe low quality content or the student's version of what they taught, which is lower in quality than the professor intended to, is then being shared or even sold on the internet. So I think sooner or later we had to reach this point that on a higher level a decision is being made, what this whole movement, is it okay to do that? And of course not only to share, but is it okay to sell notes and to make money with it? Or are we against, as schools, as higher education, as districts, and so on? So I think it's a very difficult and nuanced discussion going on here. So give me your take on that.
Yeah, you know, I'm a free market sort of guy. So my thinking is that those students who take poor quality notes and attempt to sell them will ultimately fail in that. And the students who take high quality notes are going to have their notes picked up. Now the question then is how much of a professor's or a university's intellectual property then being sold by somebody else without any sort of royalties or kickback to the instructor. Again, reading somebody's notes and buying their notes is very different than actually being in a classroom with a professor. And I gave a talk at a virtual talk yesterday at the University of Alberta about exactly the same issue, talking in that case about iTunes and OpenCourseWare, iTunes University, and their medical school in particular has been very resistant to sharing lectures and recordings and resources because the professors believe that then they're diluting their intellectual property by opening things up and sharing it. Again, I like the idea that a doctor in Malawi could just as easily could get knowledge. No, it's not the same as that doctor coming to Stanford or coming to the University of Alberta or wherever and actually being trained there. But they're gaining knowledge, and that knowledge helps save people's lives in Malawi. Then all the more power to it, and that's not going to cannibalize an instructor's potential enrollment in their classes, nor will it do anything but improve the overall global positioning of the University of Alberta or Stanford or wherever. But just last week we were also talking about the troubles for the professors at Stanford who realized, hey, I should take my OpenCourseWare initiative. Let's get some startup funding. Let's go do something really cool with this.
Yeah, now I'm a founder and do some really cool stuff. Yeah.
I come down on the side of openness, and you are defined by how good a job you do in your classes. And if you're secure in what you're doing in your classes, people are going to want to see you in person, hear you in person. It's like having a CD versus a concert. Artists don't make much money off their CDs. They make money off their concerts.
Absolutely.
If they're poor performers, exactly.
Yeah.
All the MP3s that get downloaded illegally have very little impact on an artist's bottom line. But if they're an amazing performer, you're going to spend extraordinary sums of money on the tickets, and you're going to go see them. The same goes for top professors. If they're amazing, you want to be part of their class and part of that discussion, not seeing something asynchronously or reading some notes from a student.
Yes, I definitely see the same thing happening with with EduQuest articles and interviews being used or integrated on other blogs, and also some of the materials I create for my German students. In the end, as you cannot stop it, I see it as free marketing, and I mean,
Exactly.
as long as my name spreads, why not showing that the University of Alberta's medicine faculty is so great, has so high profile professors, and tell everybody that is basically the best school for medicine to go to. I mean, we had the same discussion going on in the education scene a few months ago. I remember when schools had to decide, so the teachers creating materials and then sell those on platforms like, if we stay with New Schools Venture Fund, Better Lesson, for example.
Right.
So do they use the materials from school, books and so on to prepare and to make the concept of those lessons? Do they use their official working time for it, or do they do it at home on weekends or after school? And then, making money off that. But I think, as you pointed out, for the ex-professors now becoming startup founders and do something great. Also, those teachers then earning $200,000 a year on the side, selling their lessons are a rare breed. So you will always have the mass of teachers really making lesson plans on the weekends and, maybe use a book the school had originally bought for them, but I don't know if you should go in there and cut off some heads. And I'm also a free market gal.
Right. You know, as you said, if they're raising the profile of the school, if they are good, then the more publicity there is, the better. And people who I tend to find that people who are unwilling to do that are just probably a little more insecure about their position and what they do. And I think it welcome to 2012. Mm-hmm. You know, it's pretty tough, as you've said. You're not going to stop it. So if you can't beat them, join them and find a way to make it work for you in the new reality.
Exactly. And we can also see how Czech spreads and builds their business beyond textbook rentals.
Right.
Pretty clever, although, with Note Hall having a certain history, I mean, good for the founders that they got this exit. It will be interesting to see, as from the article, I think we learned that almost the whole, is it the whole district or just the University of California?
I think it's the whole. It's really the whole. The whole state and the state university system. So.
And that's an important state. So.
Yeah, that's a pretty big system. Again. There's I think there'll be some clarification that comes out of that as well. You know, are we talking about just simple sharing? And I think that sites that have people sharing not for profit, but simply sharing, they're going to have a much easier time than sites where students are selling their wares.
Yeah, I think so.
For better or for worse, that's where the problem's going to come along. So maybe Czech will have to take a little look at that business model and we'll see what happens. You know, Czech has always been a bit irreverent in what they do, but I'll be curious if this is a risk for them or if this is just one more step in their dominance of the college sort of social learning scene. Mm-hmm. I hope it's the latter.
Will be interesting to follow that string, definitely. All right. Our next sponsor of the show this week again are the folks over at Language Lab, languagelab.com. learn English as a second language or a foreign language in a virtual environment, may it be for your personal reasons, so personal development of general English, but then also for like professional bodies, organizations. They have, of course, standard business English, but then also highly specific courses like training on an oil rig, so for petrol engineers, and so very innovative things happening over in their virtual city called English City. And I mean, a lot of people are into gaming, virtual worlds, so why not learning English with playing a character? And I mean, that's pretty, I mean, obviously always for a certain group of people. So I have to ask Shifra Jandan, who is the founder and CEO, if they actually have mostly young people or people of all ages, or if they are specifically popular in Asia maybe, so to get some more demographics on that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
That will be interesting to hear. And but yeah, I mean, sounds like fun. And what I've seen, so he showed me, of course, how it works, and let me go around a little bit. So I mean, yeah, it's fun.
Well, I mean, I think to bring that sort of immersive approach to language and a real-world approach, you're going to learn it better. I think all too often we see, generally in countries that the teaching. We had a long discussion about language a week ago, but generally in countries that the teaching of foreign language is not necessarily done in an immersive way. If you need to learn something quickly, intensively, and you're going to be on an oil rig in a month, you darn well better know how to communicate pretty effectively. So I would love to do that in a simulated environment instead of being thrown onto an oil rig, unable to speak with my coworkers and know when they're telling me to leap or run or fire. I should know some key words. So I think that's a great approach for the right environment.
And I think for some people also that they have the security of playing an avatar, so nobody sees who you really are, and if you don't have the answer or feel a little bit shy or embarrassed for some reason, then it could be a great way. I think particularly for Asian people, what we sometimes hear that they really feel blocked and limited to start speaking in English, and there, well, you can be a normal person, human, but you can also be a dragon, or you can have wings and everything. So, I mean, you can be what you are or what you want to be in English City. So I think it's a good approach. And
I only practice French in my car, so no one has to hear my horrible accent. And it took me a long time to be willing to speak Japanese in any sort of reasonable public setting, because the moving your tongue in that way just does not come naturally. Especially the switch between Asian and then the Romance and Germanic languages. It's a tough switch. So I think to reduce the self-consciousness, I think that's great.
So you can visit them at languagelab.com, and also on these social networks, they are always at Language Lab on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere around. Good. And now we now constantly hear of Khan Academy, so almost no week anymore when they don't come out with one or the other news, but yesterday they had some pretty big news to share. And Google's technically number 3, so their first employee, a developer, Craig Silverstein, will be leaving Google on February 10th, and he will join Khan Academy as apparently only a, in parentheses, simple developer. So, so of course, Khan Academy got some money from Google, but they also got grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other people. I don't think that this is related, and well, on the All Things D article, we don't get really many news or substantial information. So Kara Swisher also talks more about what a nice guy he is, and how she got along with him or learned about his work and his personality over the years. So nothing very precise yet. For the Khan Academy, I think pretty big news, at least another big name.
Yeah, well, I think this is one thing that's been missing from Khan. I mean, they have a lot of great content, and no pun intended. He couldn't have had a better last name. They should just rebrand it Content. Anyway, version there, but they do have really outstanding courseware. But there's not a unifying sort of way to present or to make use of this. I don't want to call it an LMS, but there's no sort of superimposed LMS. The right developer or the right person with the right sensibilities around development, obviously, one of the Google founding technical members probably has the right sensibilities to bring the right social pieces to this, to bring the right tech all around. He could really drive Khan forward to not just be a repository of content, but a school. And or at least a much greater force in terms of a place where people can go and get the information they need.
Mm-hmm. I think it was maybe something that they really wanted to have. Just very basic, not requirements, but saying this is the way we do it. I mean, you have Khan himself with his style, and then the new faculty members, may it be the two art people, so who basically discuss the paintings and the history of art in their very specific way, and then mathematics and doodling with V Hart, right?
Yep.
I was thinking of Vicky, but it's just V Hart, and so everybody being free to further develop their style and their way of teaching, and really now being able with the support of Khan Academy to continue and improve their teaching, but not Khan imposing, okay, this is how you have to do it from now on. But with this addition in a high-profile developer and a technical person, I think, yes, you're right saying that the Khan Academy could benefit from it in sort of being more a less heterogeneous structure.
Right, there's going to be infrastructure imposed upon it without taking away from the individuality that really makes it unique, and that gives students the opportunity to learn from a variety of teaching and learning styles. I think that's just being able to add some sort of infrastructure to it to make it even more usable in mainstream settings, to have teachers be comfortable assigning the following 4 modules to their students because they're organized in this way, and they can track some metrics with that. I can envision all sorts of cool things that could happen with the right technical overlay without having even touched the teaching styles. It's just bringing it together.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, 2 weeks ago, we have talked about the Classroom 2.0 book project, and you are involved, Chris, as the editor of this project. So Classroom 2.0, I think I have read, they have now definitely over 100,000 members, and I suppose that there have been made some contributions to the book project already. I followed this on Twitter, and I saw some encouragement, of course, by the initiator. So give us an update on the project. Have some educators already contributed to it, and how is it going?
Yeah, so we've actually gotten several contributions already, high quality stuff. Lots of questions, though. I think Classroom 2.0. This is the reason I wanted to talk about it again today. It's it's meant to be a best practices guide in a sort of informal way, kind of like Khan Academy. We have everyone contributing their own style, but all of that centered around the theme of best practices in the classroom. So I think we have lots of people in Classroom 2.0 who are members of Classroom 2.0 or members of other kind of very high profile educational leaders who are looking at this saying, well, what do you want me to write? What do we write about? Or hey, can I write about this? So I want to encourage everyone who has a thought on Classroom 2.0 and what that might mean to them, the next generation of the classroom enabled by technology. Check out classroom2.0.com. Or if you're a member, go to classroom2.0.com. There's a nice big link now for the book project, and submit a story idea. We're looking for 2,500 words or less, centered around best practices, the use of technology in the classroom, but it doesn't have to be just that. We have an emerging section on educational leadership. We have an emerging section now on open educational resources. So there's lots of ways of looking at this, but we need lots more contributors. And since I get the emails that come through that form, I'm the guy who's going to respond to you and say, hey, that's a great idea. Could you refocus it this way? Or let me answer your questions on that, give you some guidance. That's kind of my role here is to be able to provide a lot of feedback, a lot of guidance, and some direction for people who have some curiosity. So please don't hold back from contributing or contributing an idea just because you're not really sure how to flesh it out. That's why I'm here. So
don't worry that your question might be not as high profile as somebody else's. So feel encouraged to contact Christopher via Classroom 2.0 or your email directly.
Go ahead and do it through Classroom 2.0 because then it goes through a filter and it jumps to a couple email accounts of mine and it goes in my face and I can't possibly miss it in the hundreds of emails I get a day. So I've set it up. So if you just hit classroom2.0.com, click on the book project and submit an idea. There's a number of things that are asked for, but we're pretty open to coming to us with a rough idea. Okay, now let's flesh it out. Or here, take this direction. Come back to me in a week with some thoughts. I'm really flexible in that, and there's some brilliant ideas out there, and there's teachers out there who are doing amazing things in the classroom, but may not actually know how to tie it together into a 2,500 words article. Well, I'm here. I'll help you out. So definitely check it out.
The deadline fixed when you will stop collecting ideas?
Yeah, March 15th is when we're asking for the final submissions to come in. So that's coming up pretty quick. It seems like
a good month to go, but get your stuff together now and write now instead of waiting for too long.
Exactly. You'll get lots more feedback from me now than when I have the crush of hundreds of papers coming in on March 14th. I won't be as helpful then. Right now I've got a little time to be helpful.
Exactly.
So
you will get the VIP treatment now.
That's right. I might respond to you, in moments as opposed to days like I usually wait to respond to people when they email me. So definitely give us a shout.
Great. So Chris, well, we mentioned that your latest article on ZDNet is about a goal book and very interesting to read. I learned more about this whole special needs children, although for me they are all like normal children, but having special lesson plans and so on. So that was also interesting to read. Other stuff you have coming up on ZDNet or something interesting over at WizIQ?
Yeah, so on WizIQ, we're actually working on an ebook right now, trying to flesh out the various options that teachers have for e-learning resources, and at WizIQ, we're actually looking at some ways that we can implement some of those within our network. So there's lots of things happening behind the scenes at WizIQ, but more and more content coming over there. But certainly on ZDNet, I've got a number of things in the pipeline, a lot of which all relate to this idea of ecosystem and everything we talked about today as well. I think if Apple's announcement that we've talked about ad nauseum has done nothing else, it has highlighted the need for an ecosystem of great products that students and teachers can plug into. So that's kind of my theme lately is ecosystem.
Great. And for myself, well, if we talk data portability and Google in a wider sense, if you want, you can check out my blog on bigthink.com called Disrupt Education, where I write about maybe we will soon see a new physical product from Google using augmented reality in shades. Well, about this whole Facebook photo storage story and also Path user data. So the new sort of hip social network on mobile. You can check out my personal blog at kirstenwinkler.com. So that's it from my side. And,
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much, Christopher, for being a great co-host once again and asking our guests some very important and insightful questions. Couldn't do without you. And you add, you add definitely this this nice educational K-12 administrator LMS thing to the show, and I'm very happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here. Thrilled to be here.
So we see you all next Friday, or the recording most likely every Sunday. And well, thanks for watching Review Ed or listening to Review Ed.
Thanks for being here, everybody.